2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another 30 for 30. That's right, 30 episodes of Set Lusting Bruce in 30 days. Every day of November, a new episode, always talking about Bruce Springsteen music. And joining me today is my good friend from Blogness on the Edge of Town, Peter Cianca.
Thank you so much for having me back on.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. As we're recording this, we're a few days before election, and it is just a lot. There is just a lot of crap going on right now.
There is. It is Halloween night as we speak, and
Yeah,
the election is pretty scary, so that is appropriate.
thank you. I am doing my best. So, yeah, it's going to be a long walk home. Then we'll have to see.
Yes, that's all we could say.
Yeah, so in case someone is not aware, why don't you tell us about yourself?
So I started Blogness on the Edge of Town, the very long, unwieldy name that I should have probably thought a little longer and harder about before I gave it to my blog back in 2007. It was a long time ago. And at that time, um, it's interesting. Bruce Springsteen himself did not even have a Twitter account. Okay, this is how far
Yes.
back we go. So it was like us and like Backstreets and some folks over in Europe, and it was a very small field of people putting out Springsteen content on any sort of regular basis online. But it took off right away, and I loved doing it. Got a bunch of people in there to help me, several of whom still do. And the blog, and that led to me writing a book called Glory Days, Springsteen's Greatest Albums for Endeavor Press over in London, the now defunct Endeavor Press over in London. And so, yeah, just a great experience for me all around. I still ostensibly do the blog, although you might call me semi-retired. One of the people I just mentioned, Leanne Palmville, one of our correspondents, still does a video post after every show. She collects the best YouTube videos from every concert. I'm so happy she still has the time to do that. And I went to 3 shows on this tour. I wrote about each of them. We did some breaking news posts, but we're not doing as much of the day-to-day Bruce news and commentary because frankly, there's just so much out there now. There's a lot of great podcasts like your own, for instance. And that news site Letter to You. There are all the Facebook groups. And I've actually started to enjoy more just being a fan
Yeah.
and not paying attention to every single little move that our friend Mr. Springsteen makes, just enjoying the music and enjoying the concerts. And when the mood strikes me, posting to the blog. But anything can happen. I tend to get a little, when we hear of a new album coming down the pike, I tend to get that old excitement back.
That is very nice. You and I talked a little bit before we hit record. You and I both enjoyed the Road Diary. It feels more like a behind the scenes promotional video versus a documentary, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed really from beginning to end. There's nothing I didn't enjoy about it. I like hearing him talk. I love hearing
Yeah.
all those guys. I love Stevie, Max, and really, it's fun to see them. And it's just documentary is not the right word for it, but that doesn't mean
Yeah.
that it isn't excellent at what it is, which is an excellent sort of companion piece to this tour and as
Yeah.
a souvenir of the tour. Um, if they did,
Well,
it would be a nice thing to own and hold in your hand as a souvenir of that tour. But yeah, absolutely. If you're a fan, you're going to enjoy it, but don't go in expecting a hard-hitting documentary.
it did make me want to one go to another show, and I actually did look to see how much. Okay, what tickets in Canada are on a
Right.
weekend because I can't take off any work, and okay, are there tickets reasonably priced, and like how much would airline miles, and I couldn't make it work. I didn't even bring it up to my lovely bride. I just was like looking
Yeah.
before it even was feasible. I wish that I loved the playlist, even though Nugs gives us every show you want. It was nice to see that playlist, and it made me want to. I wish they had filmed the show or they had filmed these and put them together for a like a video souvenir of the tour.
And I wouldn't rule that out, certainly down the road. They did release the quote unquote soundtrack to it
Yeah,
as a Spotify playlist with the full versions of every song that you heard snippets
yeah.
of. And I've been listening to that too. And I had the same reaction. I was like, oh, I got to get to another one of these. I'm holding out hopes. I know nothing and have heard nothing, but that he adds some more U.S. shows next summer because he does. There's
Yeah,
a bunch of gaps there, but we'll see.
yeah,
But yeah, it was interesting. I agreed with what he said, and I believe I had said the same thing way back. I think when I saw him last August at Gillette Stadium, the uniformity of the set list made the songs sound and feel more lived in when you saw them the second time, as opposed to, I think it was Nils in the show talking about how on pastors they never, so many of the shows they never really got deep into because it was like it was a one-off, it was a sign request, it was an audible. Where some of the songs on this set list, even though some people were not thrilled that it didn't vary that much, from March to August, it was like seeing a Broadway show the week it opens and then 6 months into the run, everything just feels deeper and it comes across that much more heartfelt and resonant. So I'm not complaining about that, and I would see it again tomorrow if I
yeah,
had the
absolutely.
opportunity.
And one of the things I really thought was interesting is that thought that the band members, and it was nice to hear Gary talk a lot. You don't normally get to hear Steven, you get to hear, and I
Yes,
loved
that's
him.
so funny you say that because I said to my wife, we were watching, I said, "Is this the first time I've heard Gary's voice? I've heard him sing because I have both of his albums. They're really good,
Yeah,
actually.
they are great albums, but yeah,
You never hear, very rarely, I should say,
yeah.
hear him talk to that extent.
And so it was nice to hear them. We like this idea of getting better.
You
And
get the sense that, yeah, that wasn't necessarily a welcome.
yeah. So tell me why you picked Wrecking Ball.
It's interesting. So I mentioned that book I had written for Endeavor, and I think it came out, the first edition came out in 2012. So right after, not long after this album. And so they gave me some very strict parameters because this was from a series of books they were doing, looking at these sort of major artists and their quote unquote best albums. So they basically said, and because they wanted a certain price point, they wanted to do it had to be, I had a very strict word count. So they said you pick 8 albums, no more. You just go with the first 8. It was a tough thing, and I think a lot of people were surprised that I picked Wrecking Ball as one of my 8. And I wasn't saying this necessarily that this is a contender for Bruce Springsteen's best album of all time, but I felt it deserved to be in the discussion, partly because it was fresh in my mind, I'm sure. But I just was, I remember at the time being, I don't know if impressed is the word or just happy that at this stage in his career, 40 years in or about thereabouts at the time, he was able to put out a work that just felt like really original and relevant. It didn't sound like his other albums, and I thought that was a good thing. He wasn't resting on his laurels. It had something to say. When it was greeted with a gravitas on the part of the public and the media, it wasn't this old guy putting out on another. I just turned out another one. It was
Yeah.
an event when this, I remember they rolled out the singles one at a time and there was analysis of it. And it wasn't universally beloved. I remember some of like the New York Times and other critics that had some criticism about, and we could get into some of the individual tracks. But I just thought it was a real achievement for him and it's held up. I've been listening to it all day today, and I think I enjoy it more now. And I loved it at the time.
Yeah, I think I remember loving that album. It is my wife's favorite Springsteen album is, and partly because one of her complaints when we went to see him in 2002, she didn't know any of the songs they played because it was a heavy rising. And so when we were going to go to 2016, we were going up to Cleveland to see a show. I put Wrecking Ball on her phone and she listened to it a lot and she loves a lot of the songs and especially Rocky Ground because she was doing a lot of off-road hiking at the time. And so she would hear that in mind, we've been walking on rocking down rocky ground. And she really loved that album and I did. I love and we're going to get, like you said, some different tracks, but I just think it is a really cool. And little did we know we were going to get Western Stars, we are going to get Letter to You. But at the time, you feel like, wow, he hasn't lost his fastball, right? He's been a major league pitcher for a long time, and he still has some spin on the ball was good to see.
Yeah, and again, I just liked how he didn't just put out like Magic. I love Magic, and that was more of a straight ahead like rock album, which is great. And he could have just done that again, and everyone would have been, oh, great, another rock album by Bruce. But I like the fact that it had its own sound. It was uniform through the album. It felt like the whole album took place in the same universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
His best albums do that. Born to
yeah,
Run, Darkness, they have that sound and that feel where you can feel like all of these things are happening simultaneously in this world that
yeah.
he's created there. And they're good songs.
During this month, I have had both. My guests have done it both ways. So it's dealer's choice. We can go track by track, or we can just discuss three or four highlights. So your call.
Yeah, I might as well just go through and see where the conversation goes. But it starts with We Take Care of Our Own, which I guess if there is a rock track on the album,
Yeah,
it's that one. And I like it. It hasn't stuck with me like some of the others.
right.
Maybe partially because we're still not 100% sure what it's about. I think by design, it was one of
Yeah,
those sort of several meanings and several layers in there. Who's doing the taking care of their own, and
yeah.
who are we? And but I think, but it was, and I'm going to try as we go. We've discussed this before. It's so easy to let the versions you hear of these you heard in concert later color your opinion of the song, and a lot of that is unavoidable.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
going to try to base my sort of discussion on how it sounded, how it sounds coming
Mhm.
off the record. And so I think very solid start, and if not one of his all-time classics, it definitely has stood the test of time.
I think so too. And as we just talked about, I think it's a great, maybe not understanding, as similar to Born in the USA, the kind
Yeah.
of message of, is there a little bit of tongue in cheek on we take care of our own? So yeah, I think it's a great start. One of the things I did think the album did is upbeat as tempo, slower song, upbeat, slower song. So thoughts on Easy Money?
Easy Money, it's interesting. So I remember at the time, some people were like, they thought it was a little too simplistic. Take out the dog, put out the
Yeah,
cat. It was the rhymes were
yeah,
very simple, and like I said, it was then mid to slow tempo. But what I liked about it, and I thought what it set up for the rest of the album was the idea that these are everyday people who are being pushed to their limits. So in that song, it's like this couple, you get the impression this very average, everyday
yeah,
couple who's putting out the dog and putting the cat in. Yeah, okay, let's go rob somebody because we're broke. It's
yeah,
very, and as opposed to Crazy Janie and the Magic Rat, these are not colorful characters. And I think that's what some people missed. Where are the stories? Where are these circus performers and
mm,
in-depth character studies? And I don't
yeah.
think that's what he was going for here. It was more of a, like I said, just average people pushed to their limits. And I thought it set that up well. And it has a nice, I like sort of the lilt to it. Again, I don't know if it feels, it worked your way into the album well, even if it's not necessarily one of the standout tracks.
And he did mention in his autobiography, he thought that he was really proud of this album and he thought it would do better than it did. He thought that speaking the terms, he thought it would have rung a little better, which I think is interesting because you never know. I think it did. I know my friend Sam went to the second leg of the Wrecking Ball tour, and Sam was like, I'm a little disappointed now I didn't go to the first leg when they were doing more songs from
Mm.
that album, right?
Yeah. I mean, I
Uh,
remember that it was during that tour at the beginning where he would, from the stage, he'd say, because it did debut at number one. He'd be like, number
yeah.
one for one consecutive week.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
the next week it was no longer
Yeah,
there. But
yeah,
hey, that's all you need is the one.
that's right. There you go. Um, so I love Shackled and Drawn. And this one is hard for me to not think of it live, where they get all the people out and they're doing the
Mhm.
chorus line. It's a great song.
Yeah, that's where you get into the meat of the
Yes.
album. You've built up to it with the other two songs, and with that one, it's just balls out. but still not in a rock and roll kind of way. Still has that Americana feel that I guess stomp and holler is a music genre now. I don't think it was at the time
Okay.
this album came out, or at least I had never heard of it.
Hmm.
Uh, but it definitely falls into that heavy folk with the folk blues. I don't know exactly what you call it, but again, that's most like a lot of the album. Like if anything, it's informed most by like his Seeger sessions stuff,
Yes.
but making it his own, which is very cool.
I was in my hometown, Lake Charles, Louisiana, and there was a Daniel Flaherty who had owned a bar, a Irish pub in New Orleans, and after Katrina lost it because most bars in New Orleans, as he said, it was a very almost month to month on revenue and keeping it going. And so he was singing and he doing some Irish songs as Danny often does. He is from Ireland. And I asked him if he had heard this and he hadn't. And I actually shipped him live in Dublin and Wrecking Ball. I said to I just wanted you to see Bruce embracing his Irish roots.
Yeah,
And
a combination.
yeah, and I
That's
got a nice thank you note saying he appreciated that.
and it's worth just mentioning real quick before we leave Shackled and Drawn. That has the lyric "Let a man work, is that so wrong?" Which I
Yes.
feel like is the theme of the album. Like that's it right there about the dignity of work. What happens when that's taken away from you? He just hit just the right combination there to make it work.
The other line is, "What's a poor boy to do but keep singing his song?"
Mm.
I also think of that press conference toward the end of Elvis's life where he was accepting some award when he talked about what's a do without a song and I'll keep singing my songs. Then going great to Jack of all trades, and I was lucky enough I was in the second MetLife in 2016 where they had the strings and they did Jack of all
Mhm.
trades with strings. My stepfather, with the exception of getting the gun and shooting all the bastards dead,
Yeah.
was very much this song. My stepdad was someone who could fix things around the house. He worked on cars. He made sure I knew how to change the oil in a car. The idea that you paid somebody else to change the oil in your car was just something
Yeah.
foreign to him. And so in fact, when I played this for my wife the first time, she was like, "Oh, it's Papa Kenneth." And then "Oh, that turned dark." So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on Jack of all trade?
Yeah, I think it's a great song. And I know at the time, I think, I forget if it was the New York Times or some people said, oh, it's like a spoof of a Springsteen song because it dealt with that working class, whatever. I would say it's taking sort of the idea of a Springsteen song down to its essence in a good way.
Yes.
And that waltz time that he does, and yeah, a dark turn at the
Yes.
end there. But you understand the frustration and where
Yeah.
that coming from. It was an interesting choice, and I think, and I remember commenting about this at the time. You had certain critics talking about, oh, that this is he's a spoof of himself with this song or whatever, and then the people, like the
Yeah.
fans and music fans, commenting were like, oh my God, this is my papa, this is my dad,
Yeah.
this is me. He had captured something that felt utterly real to them, and
Yeah.
I think that's what matters at the end of the day.
I think so too. Death to My Hometown, another, I just think, just wonderful live, wonderful on the album, and I just think it's a really powerful song and a different version of This Is My Hometown, right? And I just think I really, as I said, this is one of my favorite albums. And so I know I'm going to keep saying that. But this is just one of my favorite songs.
And I remember at the time, this doesn't happen as much, I feel like these days, or maybe I just don't pay as much attention. But remember that you used to just, before the album came out, when they announced the track list, it was like a big
Yeah.
deal. And I remember, I think it must have been the real list got leaked out, and somebody's like, Death to My Hometown, that's not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Come
could
on.
get a song called Death to My
Yeah.
Hometown. But sure
Yeah.
enough, he did. And yeah, I think I love the sort of the military metaphors and the rhythms there reminded me of Mrs. McGrath, Seeger
Yes.
Session, that sort of Irish. And the anger, but it was jubilant too. And it's Springsteen's only song with a musket in it.
Yeah. There you go.
Just that alone.
And yeah, I love the idea that and it's a powerful death to my hometown. And then the speeding up, right? The greedy thieves who came around and ate the flesh of everything they found. Just this going on, this powerful, and then back to that chorus, really strong.
Yeah. And this was part of what he was trying to say with the album as a whole, is that this is a never-ending story. It's been happening forever and probably will continue to happen forever. And this song could have been sung in 1800.
Yeah.
It's 1600, probably in 100 years from now. And having that sort of universal timeless feel, I think, definitely adds to it.
Hmm. Now I feel bad, even though we now learned that Bruce was fighting depression. It is just not a song that speaks to me. So your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little on the nose,
Yeah.
or a little maybe too cute by half with he's
Yeah.
talking about his depression and depression in
Yeah.
general. It's funny. I did feel basically the same way. Although listening again, knowing we were going to talk, I pulled out the
Sure.
album and I've been
Yeah.
listening to it today, and it did move me more. Now, I don't know if that's because I'm a little older and I know more about his
Sure.
background, and when I know maybe more people who've been affected by it. I don't know, but I liked it more than I remembered. But I do think I'm not sure if it's 100% successful in
Yeah.
terms of the metaphor he was trying to make, but it works.
So I think Hello Sunshine, I think works better for that kind of theme,
Mm,
and I know not a lot of people, when that was released, they weren't sure with Western Stars. They weren't sure if they were Hello Sunshine was working for them as well. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I do.
Yeah.
I'll be
Um,
listening closely to your Western Stars episode.
oh,
I'll be
very
curious.
nice. So I think Wrecking Ball is really interesting. I remember that Dave Marsh on East Street Radio said, "Oh, that's what he feels about turning 60." I think I'm getting
Right, right.
um, I remember just seeing it from the perspective of the stadium being down, and I was upset when, which I knew wasn't going to happen, but when Texas Stadium was imploded here in Dallas, I was like, why aren't they paying Wrecking Ball? Right? They should be playing Wrecking Ball on this. But it turned out to be something much more, and I was surprised about that and really happy.
Yeah, I remember he released the live version
Yes.
when Giant Stadium, the old Giant Stadium, was being torn down. And I remember thinking, oh, that's cute. Like it was fine and
Yeah.
funny and a little bit silly, almost a novelty song, it felt like at the time.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
but then in context on this album, it was almost, it sounds the same. It didn't really change anything,
No.
but it worked much better in this context, I thought, because it fit into that theme. And like you say, you just turned 60 of that grappling with mortality
Yeah.
and what it means to have fewer tomorrows than yesterdays. And it really resonated on the album and certainly in concert later than it did when I first heard it. And when I say I think it was when he played Tea Garden last March, it was a real highlight. And I think I said when I wrote it up, you've moved me almost to tears with the song about a stadium, Bruce. You've
Yeah.
you've
And
somehow done that.
and it's stayed in the rotation. And I think Hold Tight to Your Anger, but Don't Fall to Your Fears
Yeah.
is a really pro, a very strong statement. There is, I think, a lot there when you're in, and so you're right. And if you think about when you first heard it live, there is not a lot of change. And in fact, my buddy Sam says, I think it's 90% done. I think he needed another 10% of adjusting this song. I like it, but I just think it needs to be just a little bit different done. But it stayed in the rotation, and it's one of the, I think, a really powerful, especially in the context of the other songs.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, great in concert now. And that the hard times come and hard times go
Yes.
refrain really just is very powerful. I think the older you get, the more hard times get,
Yes, it
more
does.
more it resonates.
And going back to Death in My Hometown and Shackled and Drawn and Easy Money, right?
Yeah.
Right? and going back to Badlands. Poor man want to be rich man want to be king. So it is very good. Would love to have you on and defend why You
Yeah.
Got It is your favorite song.
Yeah, no, I feel like it has disappeared into the ether. It's not what anyone ever thinks about. I said at the time when I was writing my initial review of the album, felt like it had wandered in off a Bob Seger album, which is not even an insult. I love Bob Seger,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
was did not do
Yeah,
much here in the context of everything else. It's a fine song. But yeah, I think we have all moved on
yeah.
from You've Got
So we will move on as well. Rocky
It.
Ground. Give me your thoughts on Rocky Ground.
Love Rocky Ground. Again, I remember at the time there was all this, oh, one of the songs has a rap in it. This was before it came out. I remember, okay, so I don't know where I read it because there was no internet, but in the 86, 87, maybe it was an item in Rolling Stone that says Bruce's next album that wound up being Ton of Love was going to be a country album. And I
Oh,
was like,
okay.
oh
Yeah,
no, I hated country at the time. I've expanded my horizons now and I
yeah.
appreciate a lot of country music. But as a callow youth, I was like, why is Bruce Springsteen? And of course, it was not a country album.
No,
But I remember with this one, what's he doing? He's putting a rap in there. He's just
yeah,
trying to stay relevant. But I think it works great in the context of the song. It's Michelle Moore is terrific, first of all.
yes,
Um, and her rap, he could have done it as
yeah,
the young struggling mother, but I think having her do it was an excellent choice. And his
yeah,
sort of like the way he howls under it and coming out of it, it was the sort of the perfect compliment there. And between that and the religious imagery, which of course he's been fond of his whole career, he made it ambitious and he pulled it off. I think it's a great song.
yeah. Elvis would do gospel albums. This Is Your Sword. There is just enough in there that I'd really be interested if Bruce wanted to do a gospel album.
Mm.
Because yeah, I love the in the way he uses his voice. The angels are shouting glory, hallelujah. Yeah, really, I think once again, really fun to see live, but it works really well on this. And then Land of Hope and Dreams is my favorite Bruce Springsteen song, that or Better Days. So I was happy to get an official studio
Mm.
version. I know we can debate on the live 99 or this, what's the best version, but any version of Land of Hope and Dreams makes me happy. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I still consider the live in New York City version the quote unquote definitive
Hmm.
version, just because I that's where I first heard it.
Yeah,
But I remember hearing at the time that they tried to do a studio version right after that and just couldn't nail it. And it's probably for the best because I think they did here. I think so. They used Clarence's saxophone track from one of
right.
the live performances and they cleaned it up. And so just for that, it was
Yes.
worth them doing. He had passed away just 2 years earlier, and that gave it a whole new level of resonance. It's absolutely a top five song of his for me. It's a stone cold classic.
Yeah.
I love hearing it. I thought he might pull it out in Philly,
Yeah.
but he didn't.
Yeah, it's one of those I want to hear it every show. I loved that. So it is, and I used to love when he would do it live, and he doesn't do it now, but like they started, this is Land of Hope and Dreams. Always made me a lot of fun.
And you remember what's amazing. So you think back to '99. I know he was
Yeah.
much younger, not a spring
Yeah.
chicken in his 40s.
Yeah.
He would do this 3 hour show, and they come out and do this brand new song that nobody
Yeah.
ever heard, and just blow the place away.
Right.
Right. And everybody, their arms are swinging and they're, when they're singing along by the end. And it's, that he was able to, it's a gutsy move to begin with. I'm going to end with this brand new song.
Right.
Um, and just the way he was able to do it and make it so powerful every night at the very end of the night after having just gone all out for hours prior to that. I mean, it really says a lot. And yeah, like you said, I'm glad it has been. And he seemed to go through a little period there where he's still in it, where there's some of these sort of songs that he's done in concert, but that never recorded studio versions that he seems to want
Yeah.
somewhere. And this was a good place for this one.
And then we finished the official release, and then there's a couple of bonus tracks. But with We Are Alive. I think once again, mortality, talking about we explore a lot more of this in Letter to You, but I think it's just really an interesting song.
Yeah, it's just all those different stories interwoven, and like I said before, this was the beginning between this and Wrecking
Yeah,
Ball of thinking about the people you've lost and what remains of your life and what that means and well, what we could do about it. Nothing. And I remember saying at the time, it ends with him literally whistling past a graveyard because what else can you do?
right.
It just yeah, just a very cool approach, and I just like it was a perfect ending because it got a little bit away from the daily grind that he was
Yes.
talking about in the others when the what the average Joe has to put up with
It,
day in and day out to looking,
right.
well, what comes next, what comes at the end, and so it was
Yeah.
appropriate that this ended the album.
And when I heard it, and I still to this day, I always think he's talking to Clarence. Let your mind rest easy, sleep well, my friend. It's only our bodies that betray us in the end.
Yeah,
And
I
to
was going to ask
Danny,
you
right?
yeah, I was going to ask you if you thought that because it was his first album after Clarence had passed,
Yeah,
and some people were like, "Where's the Clarence song?" Because there was that last Carnival was very much
yeah,
a Danny song, and any album with "We Are Alive" at the end of it,
yeah.
especially right after the song that where they used Clarence's saxophone from Beyond the Grave, basically, that has to be there. That's at least part of it,
I
um,
agree.
and it adds yet another level up there.
Yeah. Swallowed up, belly of the whale. Thoughts?
It's it's exactly what you want from a bonus track.
Yeah, yeah,
It's weird and interesting, and you're glad it wasn't on the real album.
yeah. And then I loved American Land. Once again, gosh, this is the most I brought up Sam in a while. Sam said you could make the argument that American Land and Land of Hope and Dreams are what people think Born in the USA is about. And I loved when they were closing with American Land. It is a fun track, especially during this political cycle. And by the time this is released, who knows what the election's going to do. As we mentioned, we're recording on Halloween night. Immigration is such a hot topic and a
Mm,
debate on this campaign cycle. And I think it's good every once in a remind that the people that built this country, they're always trying to keep out. Yeah,
It's yet another one of these could have been said at so many points in our history and the history of other countries, and it doesn't seem to be changing.
yeah,
This is another one where I think the live version on the expanded Secret Sessions album is the definitive version.
I agree.
Um, but this has an interesting sound to it. There's interesting echoes in there, and
Yeah,
it's a fine, like again, fine bonus track. Nice to
yeah,
have it. And the song itself is, yeah, I think it is super relevant, continues to be relevant, and
yeah,
I love that too. One of the times I was in the pit for Springsteen. I've only been a couple of times, but this was at a pretty small venue for him out in Mansfield, Mass, with the E Street Band, and so I was right there. And they came right up, and Nils had the accordion out, and it was like, or Charlie did. I forget exactly who did what,
yeah,
but it was just an awesome way to close.
yeah.
And yeah, I won't complain about that. I did listen. So when I started my day, I listened to it once through on vinyl. So I didn't hear
Nice,
those two. And then I called it up on Spotify, and that ran through the whole thing with the.
nice.
But yeah, I got to hold it in your hand sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thoughts about the album.
I feel like it's held up. It was a sign of his continued maturity and relevance. And in addition to that, it was the beginning of something. I feel you could really trace, what he's done since from this moment and
I
this
agree.
album. These sort of gestating ideas of again mortality and the light of the oncoming train and these metaphors that he's been working with since then. And I'm sure I got 60 bearing down on me, and I have a feeling that's one of those birthdays where you start thinking about that stuff maybe a little more than you used to. And I think I would rather see him as an artist grappling with that because it's something that he's experiencing and it means to him than sitting there saying, all right, if I was still 28, what would I be writing about. What's it like to, I don't, that's not what he's feeling, and that's not where he's going to do his best work. So I think it was a sort of a sign of things to come, and a good sign.
Absolutely. I agree. It is one of the albums that I continue to keep on rotation. It is always hard, and that's why I loved your book, trying to decide what is the best, because they change every day depending on your mood and going through there. But this is, I remember how much I loved that album, and I continue to love the album. If someone wants to reach you, Peter, how can they?
Like I said, there is still a blog called Blogness on the Edge of Town, where
Yes.
we will occasionally weigh in with the news of the day and opinions, and with our video wrap-ups of every show,
Yes.
thanks to the wonderful Leanne Palmaville. And we are always open to ideas. That is, just Google Blogness on the Edge of Town is the easiest
Yes.
way to find us.
Yes.
Keep plugging away.
And anything new, exciting with the strip?
Yes, I know you are a fan of our comic strip Pet Peeves, which I do with very talented cartoonist Dave
Yes, I
London.
am.
I cannot draw, so I write the scripts,
Yes.
and yeah, we're actually in. We've put out three collections now of our strips. It's been going since 2016. We had a little bit of a shift in focus this year. So it's a family strip about a family of dogs who act like real people. And we focused on the son, Freddie. We've gone into school with him and met some
Yeah.
of his friends, and just trying a little different to just to freshen it up a little bit, and also maybe bring in some younger readers.
It's fun. I love every time there's a new collection. I pick it up. They make me smile. I'm on your mailing list and I smile at all the stories. And you guys have so much fun with this character. And the dad, God love him, is just, they're us.
Yeah, yes,
You know,
the title of our last collection was Nerd Dad. If anyone has ever referred to yourself you with a similar phrase, you will appreciate that. And if people are interested in that, you can go to petpeevescomic.com and check that out.
I recommend it strongly. All right, listeners, thank you for spending some time with us. I want you to clear your mind and open your heart and remember that we had lost Clarence. We weren't sure what's going to go on. And you get that wrecking ball and you put on that vinyl, you put in that CD and hear that we take our own and go back to that joy of hearing new Bruce music and spend some time with it. I think you'll enjoy it. Peter, thank you so much for making a visit. Let's continue to do this. And as always, an open seat anytime you want to come visit.
I appreciate it.
All right, listeners, remember to be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
No, always a pleasure. Exhausted.
Oh, good. All right, let's talk the river.
I'm Wrecking Ball.
That's right. You're wrecking ball.
You may be
Yes.
nervous.
No, you are wrecking ball. Thank you. No, thank you. In fact, I
You're
was
doing one of
about
these a day, so I get
I am doing one a day.
it. Oh my goodness.